Resuming debate. The honourable member for Edmonton West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be sharing my time with my colleague from Saskatoon West, as we fondly know him as the member from Saskatoon West, Edmonton Mall. Now, I rise on C-64 today. Officially it's called an act respecting pharmacare. I have two other names for that. One is the liberal name, the proper liberal name of the bill, which is Fake News to Satisfy Gullible NDP Caucus Act. And then the longer title is the NDP. I hope no one notices we said we'd force an election unless we got a comprehensive and entirely public pharmacare program, but sold out for little act. Now, I am being a bit sarcastic here, but this is the truth. The government has repeatedly stood in this House and said it's pharmacare, it's inclusive pharmacare, but it's not. It's two items. The NDP has constantly stood up with their colleagues across the way in the senior partnership or the radical wing of the NDP and said it's a pharmacare, comprehensive pharmacare, single pay, but it's not. It's just covering two items, despite what they'd have you to believe. Now, it does cover potentially, but we don't know the details, diabetes drugs and birth control. But what it doesn't do is cover the largest chronic diseases that Canadians are suffering from. The top ones like hypertension, osteoarthritis, mood and anxiety disorder drugs, osteoporosis, asthma, obstructive pulmonary disease, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, ischemic heart disease, cancer, dementia, and rounding out the top list is diabetes. So only one item out of the major chronic issues that are diseases or afflictions hurting Canadians. So where's the coverage for those? Nowhere to be found, which is why the government should not, and other people in the South should not be calling it a Pharmacare Act. They can come up and name it, well, a potential Pharmacare Act down the road, but they should not be misleading Canadians and believing this is a Pharmacare Act. So I asked, where's the coverage for hypertension? 8 million Canadians suffer from this. Osteoarthritis, 4 million Canadians. Osteoporosis, 2 million Canadians. Asthma, 4 million Canadians suffering. How many of those are getting covered by this so-called Pharmacare Act? 0. Obstructive pulmonary disease, 2 million Canadians suffering from it. How many covered? Not one. Ischemic heart disease, 2.4 million Canadians suffering from this. How many are covered under this plan? Not one. Cancer, 40% of Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. 250,000 new cases every year. How many are covered under this so-called Pharmacare Act? Not one. Dementia, 750,000. Not one covered. So where is the coverage? Now, I want to get back to my comments, snarky, I admit, about the NDP. I want to quote, this is from the National Post, NDP members drew a line in the sand by passing an emergency resolution at their policy conference in Hamilton that says the party should withdraw its support if Liberals do not commit to, quote, a universal, comprehensive, entirely public pharmacare program. So if you look up comprehensive in the dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary, comprehensive, complete, including all or nearly all aspects of something. So is this all or nearly all aspects of pharmaceuticals? No, of course not. Anne McGrath, the party's national director, says getting a bill that has teeth will be your party's biggest priority as parliamentarians return to the House of Commons. Canada has about 9,000 approved pharmaceutical drugs. This act will cover maybe 200. So where's the other 8,800? Let me just finish with a quote from Anne McGrath. Weak legislation is not going to be acceptable to the New Democrats. Maybe 200 for diabetes and birth control out of 9,000 seems to be acceptable. The NDP leader, it has to be strong, it has to have teeth. And I feel that like that resolution gave me and the caucus a lot of bargaining power. It's a lot of strength. So I wonder when my colleagues in the NDP are going to be withdrawing their support. Probably not. One of the issues I have, and I brought it up in an earlier question, is large majority of Canadians are covered, but there are some that are slipping through the cracks. There are some not covered, some only partially covered. But they are covered by the province. Alberta, for example, covers most of the issue or most of the items brought up extensively. BC does, Quebec does, Ontario does. Pretty much every province, I think except one or two of the Atlantic provinces, do cover diabetes or birth control for low-income Canadians. But they're not covering the other items of importance, hypertension, some of the others. This bill, I think, is going to cost, or the initial phase of this is going to cost about $1.5 billion. I think that money could be used better, either giving it to the provinces for rounding out the services, or better yet, focusing on Canadians afflicted with rare diseases. We had a couple of families came to my office. Their young children were suffering from SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. Horrible disease. Generally, it's a death sentence by the time the child is age 2. Now, these two families in Edmonton, their children were diagnosed with that. About the same time, a new drug had come out called Spinraza. And I have to give points to the pharmaceutical companies for how they come up with these names. But Spinraza did not cure the disease, but it did extend life to about 18 years old. The child will not have great quality of life, but they could live to the late teens. When Spinraza came to the market, the NDP, Rachel Notley's NDP, was in power in Alberta. We went to the local MLAs, we went to the NDP to see if we could get this drug sped up for coverage in Alberta. You know what? The NDP refused to look at this. The same NDP that says it's a line in the sand that they will force an election over, they refused to help out this family. When the UCP, the Provincial United Conservatives, were elected, a chap named Tyler Shandro was the health minister, much aligned, and probably sure a lot of it was deserved, managed to get the Spinraza approved for the family within 2 weeks. It's a very expensive drug. But along came a better drug called Zolgensma, and I truly believe it is a miracle drug. Instead of like Spinraza, where children were treated, would have to spend about a month a year in intensive care, spinal tap and everything, Zolgensma was one shot in the arm. It sought out the bad gene and copy-pasted the good gene over, basically stopped the disease in a track, and would give the children a chance at a strong life. It would be about $45 million a year to treat everyone afflicted with this, everyone born every year in Canada. I think this is where, if the government is going to spend this money, it should focus on that. It should not be spending money focusing on replacing programs that already exist. I think it's about 60% of Canadians have a program delivered through work. Instead of subsidizing those 60%, they should look after people like this in need. These two families had to actually go out and fundraise for this drug. Ryan, the gentleman who plays Deadpool, actually was helping fundraise for this family, or for these two families. Luckily enough, a benefactor came across, Corporate One, that provided for everyone in Canada. But this is an example where that $1.5 billion could be better spent. Another couple of my writing, their child was suffering from PKU, which is a rare inherited disorder. Causes a buildup in amino acid in the body, prevents it from metabolizing protein. Children cannot have protein. $5,000 a month out of pocket. The government should look after covering this. 27 million Canadians already have coverage through work. This Liberal plan, single-player plan, is going to subsidize either the companies who are already paying for this, or they're subsidizing Big Pharma. And it's funny, Big Pharma, they just hit an extra tax for too much profit through the government, our Liberal government. Temporary Canada Recovery Dividend to attack pharmacies or the Big Pharma, who they're now going to subsidize. Or they could actually be subsidizing companies direct, including Loblaws. At the same time they're demonizing Loblaws in this House, they will end up subsidizing. So I do not support the Act as it is. There's better ways to do it, just not the way the Liberals and the NDP are doing it. Madam Speaker, thank you.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government Health Leader.
Yes, so thank you, Madam Speaker. And I disagree with the member across the way and the Conservative Party's approach in general dealing with the issue of pharmacare. The member seems to be, yes, we have all these medications that are out there, and why are we just limiting to 2? The short answer is that this is a very significant first step, and there is a substantial cost to it. It will ensure that we don't get this a varying patchwork depending on which province you happen to live in determines what kind of a fee that you would actually be paying. We have literally 100+ different types of plans that are out there, public, private. I would even suggest there might even be some nonprofit stuff out there. My question is, does the member not recognize the true value of moving forward on such an important issue of pharmacare? And this is, in fact, one of the ways he can do that is by supporting this legislation.
For Edmonton West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The reality is this huge amount of Canadians, the majority, are already covered by plans, either through the government or through their work. The government should be looking and helping those who are slipping through the cracks or those who have near or no coverage. They shouldn't be looking at subsidizing big corporations so they don't have to provide it to their employees, and they shouldn't be looking at subsidizing big pharma for these things. They should look after helping those slipping through the cracks or those who have no coverage at all.
Questions et commentaires? Questions and comments? L'honorable député de Berthier.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinochet. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to ask my colleague about the question I asked earlier about health transfers to the provinces and Quebec. The provinces and Quebec have the expertise in that field. And how does he interpret the answer from the member earlier when he said, yes, indeed, Quebec has the expertise and we can learn from that expertise. And at the same time, with the other hand, they want to crush our system with a new pan-Canadian system, and they seem to think they know the truth. Thank you.
For Edmonton West.
No, I agree with my colleague from the bloc. The provinces are responsible for health care. The provinces, by and large, are mostly providing that already. I look at Alberta, $2,400 for patients with diabetes currently regularly using insulin, $320 for diabetic medications for high risk of hypoglycemia, $160 for medications of low risk, hypoglycemia, monies for pumps. The provinces are by and large already filling a lot of those gaps. The government, if they wish to spend the money, should deliver the money to the provinces who are delivering the services so they can fill those few last gaps rather than creating a whole new level of bureaucracy, a whole new level of potential problems. The government can't pay its employees. They've messed up the Canada Life, the switch for public service pharmaceuticals. Somehow, I do not think they're going to be able to cover 40 million Canadians with the new plan out of the blue.
We have time for a brief question. The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Conservative member has been parroting talking points from the big pharmaceutical companies. And while he talks about the majority of Canadians already having coverage, people with diabetes who are covered are still spending thousands of dollars out of pocket for essential medication. Why doesn't he think that those people deserve support?
The Honourable Member for Edmonton West, a brief answer, well, within 1 minute.
It's funny, I have not once parroted big pharma talking points. I did parrot the NDP, though, with a comment that they would force an election unless a comprehensive plan was delivered. I have to ask, why is this member still propping up a government that promised a comprehensive plan when it's just delivering 2 items?
Right.